A really large tech influencer, a drone manufacturer reached out to them and wanted this particular influencer to feature a drone in one of their videos. So DJI is the name of the brand. And DJI they wanted him to do that and basically do it for free. So they didn't want to pay for it. And there was some back and forth in terms of what's the video going to be? He wanted to be paid, he wasn't going to get paid. And they said, okay, well, we'll give you 50% off on a drone if you can buy it. And you can imagine, right, the newest version of a drone, $1,500 drone, 50% off. So he still has to pay $750. He was not happy about that. And so the video became, the selling point of the drone was we have this software that tells, like there's a tree, so it's not going to crash into the tree. So the video became, how do we crash the drone? Ouch. And he was successful at that. But I think it underlines one of the things, right, this is a conference about authentic marketing, and for him, that actually was a more authentic video for his audience. So he actually got more engagement on that video, more fans seeing it, and probably it's helped him in future videos because it wasn't a story about why this drone is so great. It was a story about, hey, the main form of marketing for this particular drone is that it can't crash, and guess what, I crashed it.
When you're choosing influencers for your campaign, you want to make sure that their audience is similar to the audience that you want to target to. So working for a beauty brand, we were trying to reach girls and women, right? But a lot of influencers, or you could say on Instagram, there's a lot of models or influencers who look like they would be attracting girls and women as their followers, but really their audience was men. So, I think we've had people on our team partner with influencers who their audience actually wasn't even what we were looking for. And a lot of these influencers, you pay lots of money to work with them. So in the future, moving forward, we learned, ask who the audience is. And you can ask the influencer who the audience is. They know well who their followers are, because that's their brand, that's their job. They're spending all their time really knowing their audience and creating content to cater to them. So another way to really know who the audience is you can look at who's commenting, who's liking, who's interacting with their content. It's not worrying about what other people think. It's actually speaking from the heart and actually connecting from the heart. Peter, you mentioned my You Are Beautiful events, just so for everyone else to know. A couple years ago, I started a project called You Are Beautiful as a side project. And it's a program as well as an Instagram page basically to empower teenage girls and help them feel confident and beautiful in a world where media is not necessarily giving them that message. And I think when you're being vulnerable, it creates a space for people to open up and people to share and people to talk. And what you see a lot of influencers do is just that. They're opening up they're opening up their homes. The camera's always on. They're sharing things about their lives that are what most of us would think is private and not feel comfortable sharing. Sometimes they share too much. But I think in lots of ways it's important to have that element of authenticity, which is real. And sometimes brands or influencers kind of try to fake it, but at the end of the day, people know if you're real or not.
One thing that struck me, so from VidCon, that's a huge YouTube marketing conference, or YouTube conference really, it's not even a marketing conference, and it's a place where there's 30,000 fans that come in, hundreds of YouTube stars. And Gigi Gorgeous is a leading YouTube personality. She's transgender, and she's vlogged about her entire transition. And at that conference, one of the things that really stood out to me is her engagement with fans. And so when you think about what she's empowering in the world, there are people who live in states where maybe like in Southern California, transgender might not be as big of a deal as it is in other states in the nation. And there are people who are like through Gigi, they feel empowered to be much more connected to their community. They feel empowered to come out. And seeing the connection that Gigi has with her fans was just incredible.
Cool. Yeah, no, I mean, I think to be authentic actually is a lot of times means we as marketers or in a creative shop needs to get out of the way. And so it's a really hard thing to do when you got a bunch of creatives that kind of want to put their stamp on the world. But unmarketing is actually the best way of being authentic. So, I mean, it's a really tough thing to do. So I'm trying to sell this gig. I'm trying to sell this thing. I want a brand to buy it. I want to have a tissue session. I hope it goes well. You have a cocktail and you sell this campaign. But at the end of the day, if that person can speak about it the way they want to, as an influencer and someone who has a following, their brand actually has to be first. And that's a really tough pill for a lot of brands to swallow. Because their brand is as important as anything in their entire world. They give a shit about your brand if it doesn't reflect on them. So I think that's a big takeaway, is the idea of getting out of their way and having the conversations and respect and doing the upfront diligence, right? Do you know that at least if you define the guardrails, that's okay, but you gotta let them go as well. You can't stranglehold it or micromanage. It causes a really awful situation.
And how have you had to adapt from the advertising world to the multi-channel digital marketing world?
It's who's in charge.
Explain that.
The brands are actually not in charge. The agency definitely is not in charge. Shit, we barely know what we're doing to begin with, but like, yeah, I mean, I think that's the biggest shift. Is before you can throw up this great thing, even if it's like simple marketing, like a price proposition or economy, whatever. It's like, come here, get this, and that's the thing. You literally can't even do that. You're like, well, what else do I get? What's behind that? What are you guys selling it like that for? Where's it made? You know, it's like that whole thing. So I think shifting the entire conversation, the reason this is a really important thing we're talking about right now, and the fact that you guys came here, that's a really important thing, because the power is actually with the people in any capacity, and even more so. Brands are spending millions to ask a YouTuber what they think.
Yeah.
Whatever I don't even know what that means, but like, that's awesome power. So.
Totally.
We were, as far as I know, the first company to use a social network to sell a movie directly to fans. We used MySpace in 2005, and we sold them DVDs of our first movie. And we sold a lot of them, and that encouraged us in this new thing at that time called social marketing and social networking became very native to us. So we feel very comfortable in the concept of that, of creating an authentic, or just creating a real dialogue with one fan who bought your movie and thereby bought you dinner, literally. So now that we have more channels, for us, it becomes about where does a particular piece of content want to live. And we look at the channels as rivers, and we just make it a policy internally not to ever swim against the current of the particular river. So we can cry all day that Facebook changed an algorithm, or that what you could do for SEO on Google search doesn't work anymore and something else works, or YouTube, or whatever it is. But at the end of the day, you play in their sandbox, and you can either beat your head and try to figure out, oh, I used to get tons of clicks off of Facebook onto my blog, and I sold that at CPM, and made my money. Great. If that doesn't work anymore, it doesn't mean Facebook is bad. It means you just need to figure out what is good, but you still have your eyeballs. At the end of the day, that is the currency of an influencer, or a brand, in my opinion, or a content owner, is you need to nurture and build your audience all day. The money will come, but you have got to, whether it's 100 fans or 2 million fans, they will support you. And then when you find, an omni-channel, you find your channels, your various channels, you just need to speak to them in there, because they're loving you in that channel. That's their channel. It's important to them. Facebook, somebody's on Facebook and found you there, that means they like Facebook. They're in it and they found you there. Or Snapchat, or however they found you, reward them for that and then give them that kind of content.
You have this like democratization. Essentially, every social platform is a democratization of getting your message out to the world. And so it used to be that a brand could sort of have one position that they would put out into the market, and then behind that story it could be something very different, right? So if we take like Chipotle is maybe an example in that realm, that doesn't work anymore. And the reason it doesn't work is because of the democratization of that message. So it used to be that a brand could say, we're just going to spend a lot of money in these different channels and we can control that message. You can't do it anymore.
Okay, explain that with respect to Chipotle. What are they doing, or what were they doing that's not working?
So brands want, what's the story of the brand, right? Where are they sourcing their products from? Is it really authentic? Is it really organic? Are those materials what they say they are? And I think Chipotle got into trouble for presenting an image out to the world that wasn't actually connected to what they were doing behind that story. And so then you would see these really clever memes that would pop up, right? About and it'd be like Chipotle's ad, but sort of like reconfigured and remixed into a new way and that was authentic, right? And so that's what fans and that's what people were actually engaging around. And I'm optimistic about that. I think that actually makes us that makes for a better world, right? It means that a brand can't put one message out there if they're not true to that. Creators today will find that out. They'll tell that message, and it'll spread around the world.
Well, yeah, consumers call bullshit, and then the FCC decides to do something after that. So it's like really funny. It's like, no, it's like, but that's actually your point. It's like the pressure of the people is exactly the way things are changed, because otherwise, they're like, boy, I ain't doing what? You know, it's like, what the fuck, you know what you did? You're chicken shitty. Cop to it, man, or change your practices. It's super easy. Don't say it's great chicken when it's not. Because someone's going to find out, where'd you get the chicken? Sauce Galitas, man. There's a place up there. Just crank some out. You know, it's like...
That notion of authenticity, obviously, for a creator is number one. And I think finding a place where the brand and the creator really align. So I guess like a top three would be, brands. One thing that doesn't work, right? So I'll be in these conversations with brands where they'll lead the conversation. They'll say, what we want is authenticity. We want to empower people to say what they want to say. It sounds all really good, right? They've probably listened to a conference like this, but they haven't actually embodied that message. And so then we talk about, okay, well, here's some creators that can actually do that. And then they're like, well, what is that creator going to say? How can we tell them what to say? Where can we do it? And so you see that breakdown in message where a brand has listened to what the buzzwords are, but they're not embodying that and they're not actually empowering creators. So I think that's one thing that isn't working. One thing that is working really well, I think, is you talk about Numi. There's a number of beauty products in particular that are healthier for your skin. Have that organic story that isn't like Chipotle, right? They actually are good for you, better than other beauty products. BeautyCon Box is a brand that I think is doing a really good job of that. So they have influencers actually curate the products that come out in a box. Candy Johnson did that for their summer box, and they're just releasing their fall box right now. So I think the brands that are, and many times that's new startup brands, right? So the brands that have been around for 80 or 100 years, I think, really struggle with this because they're used to saying, here's our brand message, now world, like, sort of go buy our product. And the new brands say, how do we engage with people who actually have audience and have that authentic connection and empower them? And as a byproduct of doing that the right way, they'll actually drive the most sales.
Yeah, I totally agree with that. I work a lot with Lululemon, and when we sit down with influencers, the first thing we ask is, how can we help you? What are you guys doing? And can we just listen to what you're doing for a while?
Make sure you have a strategy with the influencer marketing. It's not just a random thing, right? You have to think about who you're going to be working with and plan it out in advance, because if you work with one influencer in 1 month and you want to use them the next week for another campaign, it might be oversaturating the market. That's another thing. You want to make sure that you're not putting your brand out there too much on the same channels, with the same influencers. You want to spread it out, because I've seen it happen where the influencers don't want to work with the brand anymore because their fans are complaining that they see the product too much. It doesn't feel authentic anymore, right? They're seeing the fans and the consumers are starting to see the brand as just, and the brand and the reviews as just fake. Like, okay, it's just a media buy. It's just, you know. So that's another thing. Also, part of the strategy, you want to see, bigger is not always better. Just because an influencer has more followers doesn't necessarily mean that it's the right path to take, because you have to know what your KPIs are, your key performance indicators are. What's your goal for this campaign? Is it to get your brand in front of more eyes, or is it to make a profit? Is it to enhance ROI? So all that stuff are things to consider. And another thing I'd say is, if you can, for newer influencers, definitely nurture that relationship, because they're going to remember what brand was there for them in the beginning. They're going to remember that, and they'll be more likely to actually buy your product and use your product and maybe include your products in content that wasn't paid for. So definitely nurture those relationships, and remember that even though it's a business deal, it's still two people working together, and keeping that human side to it, and knowing, and basically recognizing the power and the influence really that these bloggers and YouTube stars have. I don't know how many that was, but...
That's good.
That was really good. That's kind of the agency side, maybe brand down, and then agency viewpoint. And then I know that there's some influencers in here, so I'll take that face and kind of look up at it. I would say tactically, live. Figure out a live strategy and do live. Those points will work for you as an influencer as well. Don't ever do something that you don't know what the point of doing it is. Even a live show, you can still plan, because you're about to go live. It's not news, where it's like happening. You're still gonna push the button and go live. So take a few minutes and figure out what it is you're gonna do. What is the purpose of doing this live show? For us right now, it's live. Everybody wants it. YouTube just tweaked their algorithm like 2 weeks ago or a week ago that they're actually giving live press, like they're lifting it up. So we had one of our channels, he got 10,000 subs in a weekend from doing some live shows. Yeah, because it just went boom. When I called him and said, "What did you change?" He goes, "I didn't change anything. I'm just doing what I do." I go, "Well, just keep doing it." And then we, heard through the grapevine, someone was like, "No, I was talking to a guy," and I said, "No, they tweaked it so that live is getting more." We all know Facebook Live, every one of your followers gets a ping the second you do it. So do your research, look at your insights, find out when most of your people are online, or take it a step further and find out when most of your people are engaging you online is probably even better, because sometimes you get kind of a false bump. But find out when you're getting your most engagements, and then go live then, and then hang out, stay live, find ways of stretching the show without being lame, but take breaks, treat it like a radio show. Howard Stern could talk all day. Why? Well, he made himself interesting. So if you're an influencer, we assume that you're interesting, but find ways of extending that experience for your fans. So 5 minutes in, every 5 minutes, like clockwork, train yourself to ask everybody where they're from, where they're viewing from. Shout out. Do 10 shout outs. Hey, John and Topeka. Hey, Mary. Do that. And then they get so excited that you said their name. And every time they comment, of course, we all know it's social. Every time they comment, their friends know that they commented. And so now, this is how you build a network.
That's great advice, Zach. And it's notable that Twitter just started their first Thursday Night Football broadcast last night, which I watched some of, and I really think is a total game changer. And I think that's how we're going to be viewing sports consistently in a few years. Ryan, when you answer this in terms of best practices, can you integrate your Game of Thrones campaign? Because I know that was super cool and great work. Like, how does that represent?
I don't care what I talk about. Game of Thrones, it was like, fuck yeah, Game of Thrones.
So how does that
Don said earlier is like, and I'll get right to the thrones because it's about strategy. The strategy from the jump is actually super important. And I actually think to have a crisis strategy is equally as important. Because who are influencers in here? Who are actual influencers? You guys are totally level, right? You never do anything crazy. So I just saw that right there. No, of course you don't. But there are other people I've heard about that go on the weekends and do stuff. And if your brand message is like popped on a Thursday and they go out there and paparazzi see that and all this business, have a plan for the crisis and the fallout of what could happen for that. I think it's really important. But this Game of Thrones example is super simple. The brief was we need to increase viewership from season 2 to season 3, which is virtually impossible because if you haven't bought in the first 2 seasons, good luck. Season 3, and HBO's like, you guys can totally do it. And we're like, oh my God, it's Game of Thrones, we'll totally do it. That's some scary shit, man. So we took the idea and we were like, we're gonna come up with something amazing. It's gonna be this most social, digital, like, we're gonna do like holograms or something. No, we made a wooden box that we got people's addresses and sent them a wooden box to the mail, like as in through the mail. And it said like House Colbert or House Mars on it. And we kind of did this like second layer of what we call fringe influencers, right? Whatever marketing word you want to do. They're not the guys you would necessarily think are giant Game of Thrones fans, but their fans would love if they were. We just need to tell them that. So we sent these dudes like their own special box, and when you open the box, it played the theme song. Dun, 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 dun. And it's like, people freaked the fuck out, man. Like, we had clips, so we sent only 50, right? All 50 people did exactly what we asked them to do. On the inside, it's like, well, please, if you would like to join your house sigil, you know, here's a t-shirt. You know, here's a special scroll. Oh, we had this little button, and this is the best thing about the box. You press the button, and a little thing came out, like, you know, like a Tom, what's the movie with the angels and demons or whatever? You know, the, what's it called? What's the movie everyone liked? You know, he was, Tom Hanks was in it. You know, thank you, Da Vinci Code. Thank you, Da Vinci Code. You love that movie. So yeah, you push that, and the thing came out, it was a scroll that said, if you're a true Game of Thrones fan, man, tweet this out, take a video, do all this, and they all did it. It was crazy. And then we pissed off about another 250 celebrities who were like, where the fuck is my box? And so we got all these emails back to that. So in other words, I guess that the point of that, to pull it back into best practice, you don't necessarily have to hit, and I think you said this too, which is super spot on, hit the guys that are like here, 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 the exact brand association. But if you can find like that fringe stuff, the press goes nuts, they go nuts, people go nuts, and you just kind of crush it with that, and we absolutely, 100% were responsible for raising the viewership to 30. It was just omelet. It had nothing to do with the writers,
Right on.
Jon Snow situation, and all that business. It was all omelet, man. Just saying. I'll be done now. Okay.
All right, I love that. Thanks for the color. All right, where's influencer marketing going in the future? What's coming down the road?
Consumers are becoming a lot more instant, where they need that instant gratification with Facebook Live, Snapchat, now we have Instagram stories. So the most important thing is really keeping your fans engaged and not selling to them so much. Keep them engaged, get them to see your brand in a way that's not a business, but that's actually their friend, or that's like a person they can relate to almost. The salesy stuff is gonna die out, just like traditional marketing is, or not traditional, but just like radio or on TV commercials has become noise to millennials and Generation Z, the younger generations. Soon, I think if with influencers, it's just gonna be another person that's paid to sell a brand, and people are gonna tune out. So keep them engaged. Keep them excited about your brand and relate to them by, I guess, come back to the word authentic. Be authentic as a brand.
Great.
Yeah, I'll build on that. Both from Zach and Donna, I think live is absolutely where we're going, and especially in the next couple of years, right? So You see, Stage Me, YouTube has launched it. There's going to be some platform. It's unclear exactly what that might be. Maybe it's Facebook Live. Maybe it's a multiple platforms. That's usually how this works. But live streaming, I think, is really where we're going. And so if you're an influencer, one thing that's interesting, right? I hear this all the time from influencers or people who want to be influencers. Like, I already missed the YouTube wave, or I already missed the Instagram wave. Well, guess what? There's a new wave that's like happening right now. And someone in this room could be a superstar on Facebook Live in like 2 weeks. I think we may have a nominee.
I expect you to be that, I can tell right now.
The other thing that's pretty interesting is going to authenticity. So I'll tell a separate story, but it'll get back to authenticity. So I heard of a designer in New York who was into, right, the whole trends and sort of new fashion design are what's the latest, right? Like styles and designs that change really fast. And she said, no, I'm not going to do that. I'm actually going to structure my life the way that I want it to be. So I'm going to spend 9 months where I do my fashion line, and then I'm going to spend 3 months living in Panama with my family and kids, off the grid completely. And I'm going to structure my life that way so that the pieces that I do design are really connected and are amazing and are somewhat timeless. And so she's actually stepped outside of that trend. And when I think about that in the influencer marketing space, right? So if you're an influencer and you said no to every single sponsorship campaign and you were just authentic the entire time, right? Like the example I gave earlier about the drone, right? If you just didn't do anything from a sponsorship basis and picked 1 or 2 a year, I think that might be a way, from an influencer perspective, that you can be an absolute superstar.
Yeah, good point. Anybody else on where we're going?
I mean, I have a thought. I totally agree with that, by the way. I think it's really interesting. But I think also the idea of big prizes, not to take it way back, but like the idea that there's an event or an experience that will only happen once, and I'm going to share it with you, like that to me is like about as authentic as it gets because it's gone.
Give me an example of that.
I have no idea. I just made it up, man.
Be creative, right?
Okay. Okay, say for instance, said brand got X musician that happened to be in Sonoma County wine tasting, and if 5 people in the next 30 minutes hit me up and I'm the influencer that's going to be there, I'm going to share that experience with you. Okay, and then it's gone. It's right there that time. Now, I think the influencer sharing the experience is what I like about that. Otherwise, I'm just pushing an experience, because if I trust them enough to give them my time, I want them to experience it with me, and then I feel super connected to people I'm only connected with on social media, which is insane. But that's exactly what's real to a lot of people.
Right, and you just said a really important word, I think, which is trust. How important is the word trust for brands and influencers right now?
It's everything. I mean, we put that in everything that we do. We're extremely transparent about our fails, as evidenced earlier, I guess, but when we make a new film and we put it out there, or we bring in a new host to host a live show or whatever, they get very nervous or whatever, and they're like, oh, I'm doing my first live show, and I'm like, tell that to the fans, tell that to the network, let them experience this, it's fine. One of our hosts, she was getting ready to do this big thing because we have this massive motorcyclist network, and so they're into choppers and they love all this lifestyle stuff. And we had a brand that was going to do it, and she had some followers, and she was really excited. And the very first thing she got up to do this thing, she dropped her phone, alive with thousands of people watching, and she was like, how amateurish, and I was texting her, I was like in her ear basically, and I was just like, keep going, don't worry, laugh it off, it's awesome. You look so adorable right now dropping your phone. And it did. It just got huge. Like, go get him, Jackie. Like, guys, everybody was like rallying around her. Like, you can do this. You can do this. And meanwhile, of course, it's a branded activation. So the brand's just like, look at this engagement. The positivity for her, of course, is encircling the entire project. So, trust. Just don't lie.
Great. Any other takes on trust? I think it's like the most important word in marketing.
Don't lie. So people will find you out, man. I lied this whole panel. You guys gotta go back and do research. You guys full of shit. You had no idea what was going on. But I
Where's the win box?
think, what's on? I don't even know. Some actor they just hired. I'm a terrible actor. That's it, man. It's a lot harder to lie, by the way, than it is to be honest.
Yeah.
So like, just don't make it hard on yourself. I mean, I think brands are always thinking of ways to manipulate. Kind of, just say it. Just say it. It's good, it's bad, it's left, it's right. You know, it's okay, man. Like, just say what you mean.
Yeah. It's really interesting to filter the current political campaigns through these ideas right now, which you just feel like in many ways they're all so far.
Well, the biggest influencer right now would happen to be Donald Trump.
No doubt.
The points show it. Historically, look at any influencer and the rise of anything. Number one influencer on the planet is that dude.
Yeah, no doubt. Okay, 5 more minutes, then we'll get to questions. Last thing, any new tools that we should all be aware of that you guys are using? Any tools that you can fill us in on? Anything? Brian, what do you got? Any tools you're using?
Well, I've heard a lot about, what's it? No, I forget. It was in our earlier panel today. Newly Hyper. Yeah. Those aren't tools I can necessarily vouch for as of using myself. I mean, for us, we're constantly looking both for influencers where we can share our message and do it authentically, and then for brands. But most of the work we do at Magic Links is to find influencers, and most of that we found is most helpful if we create in a great relationship and do well by an influencer. They'll actually tell our story for us, and so that's how we look to engage.
Love that. Donna, any tools?
I've used Tap Influence as well as Octoly. Those are platforms where you can connect you to influencers. And I would definitely recommend it. I think it's a great way to get connected with influencers, especially because you're not really setting a contract that can be often intimidating to an influencer. It's more of like, okay, let's negotiate this, and these are the terms, and the terms are right there in the platform. I would say I personally prefer just doing old school research on the platform. If I'm looking for a YouTuber, just looking for the YouTuber there. But those platforms I've seen have been successful, and it actually makes things a lot easier.
What I'm hearing from everyone is it's the magician, not the wand.
I'm a techno geek by nature. I love a new platform. So people are constantly, I'm like the guy you want to send a new platform to because I will take the time to try it. But Epoxy, what's up? Love Epoxy. They're Venice, and they approach the creation of that dashboard. It's like an implement. It helps you manage your posts. It helps you, but they approached it in a way that is not like any of the other ones because, the big boys, Hootsuite, and these guys, Buffer, I'm always like Buffer, Hootsuite, I'm not really sure which one I like better. And then there's Edgar, which is kind of cool. But Epoxy what they did for me was that they arranged the data in the right way. From just however it is that I look at the world is how they look at the world. And so you can go switch between all your channels really fast, and it will show you who, right? You're monitoring. So it's who commented on my Facebook post yesterday. Okay, fine. There's a million things that you can check that. But what they do is it's who commented, and then it takes all of those people that commented and orders them for you by who of them is has the most followers. So you can instantly know, like, if I have 10 minutes to answer back some comments today and interact with some fans, if a guy's got 10,000 followers, it just behooves me to spend time talking to him than the guy with 1 follower if I've only got 1 minute. And so it organizes it that way. But then it also will break down your posts, so it'll show your post, which of your posts got the most comments. And then which of those comments got the most like you can really see instantly, because we post 24/7. I mean, we post 24 posts a day on our main channel. So every hour, on the hour we post. That's a lot of monitoring.
Yeah.
And this thing, it's like instant. I can find my best 5 posts of the week and what conversation, why they're the best, and which is the engagement.
Epoxy.
Epoxy's awesome.
Check it out. Brian? Got anything for us?
Technology. No, I'm honestly, I can barely read, so I'm not the guy that's going to give you the whole rundown of what's new and great. Some of these names I've heard of, obviously, and the crew is way smarter than me. They're the ones who noodle with all that business. But I think after we find certain things, I actually want to go to a micro idea. Amit's been doing a lot of more micro, as in very small amounts of influencers, and we do this crazy, it's a brand new technology, you may not have heard of it. It's called a phone. And we take this device, right? And you pick it up. No, it's crazy. You actually put numbers in this thing, man.
No way.
And a person talks.
Dude, unreal. Someone on the other end of this thing speaks, right? And so you hear that, and you have a conversation, and you get behavioral insight in real time, real quick. And so I like to look at the whites of people's eyes before they punch me. So I would like to get to know you real quick. If I want to bet on you, recommend you to this brand, and we're gonna dance, then I probably should have a quick chat. And if you don't pick up the phone, I'm gonna come to your house. And so we've actually even flown people out. Have a dinner, man. You know, see how they act when they have 7 Red Bulls. I mean, a lot of those dudes are sitting in the basement, so no, not you guys, obviously, but there are other people. So I think getting to know someone personally, believe it or not, the oldest trick in the book, trust and trust and trust. It works.
Yeah.
So pick up the phone.
You know, I think that's a great point, Ryan. I've been doing a lot of consumer research projects on behalf of brands lately, and I can't believe, first of all, how detached some brands are from their end users. And I can't believe how powerful it is just to talk to like 12 people. You don't have to talk to 200. Like about 12 people, you pretty much got a very good picture of what's happening with their product. And it's really powerful if you act on what you learn. A lot of brands do that and then choose to ignore it.
Well, data is only good as how you use it, right? So
That's
why
right.
collect data if you don't want to use it?
Correct.
So
Everybody in my company does customer service, including myself.
Yeah, there you go.
So I'll, I'm not so big and whatever that I should not do it, but I mean, I have some people that do it too, but I have to do it. There's a time during the day where I do customer service, and then some guy didn't get a download, a $5 download of a movie that he bought, and he's pissed off, and it's on me to fix it. Not just say, hey, John, go deal with this guy, but it's like now, but you'd be surprised when you start talking to a pissed off customer, you can turn them into a fan or an influencer for life.
Turn that frown upside
You
down.
can turn it, man. I mean, why did I get on so pissed? And the next thing you know, by the end of the conversation, it's like, man, you guys just treat me like a person.
Yeah, because just the act of
yeah, you are a person.
says a lot about
You
your
sent me
brand.
$5,
Okay, so we've got just a few minutes left. Anybody, thank you so much, you guys. This is so much great intel here. Anybody have any questions you want to ask these guys?
I would love to hear more of your thoughts about, for example, you were saying how the brands, the agencies are not in power right now. It's the influencers have all the power. But then we hear your story about how this major tech influencer was approached by this huge brand, and not only were they not paid, but they had to be out of pocket. Now, the outcome was really beneficial to them because they had huge engagement, but I was just wondering what your thoughts were on the environment, how it may change for us mid-level influencers who are not the huge celebrities to actually make a living.
Yeah, that's a great question. So one thing that I think that is happening, regulation really hasn't caught up to what's happening, I think, for kind of in-content placement. And I think there's been a few cases, you see some really high-profile cases where someone does wrong. And there was one recently where even then the advertising around that breakdown is completely wrong as well. And there was a great one recently with PewDiePie.
Yep.
And I'm trying to remember, what was the brand? Was it Warner Brothers maybe?
Warner Brothers.
Yeah. So the net of it was you need to disclose when you're being paid or if you're giving a product. And one of the publications actually used PewDiePie as the example because PewDiePie was the influencer that was part of this campaign, but he was actually an all-star in terms of disclosure. And there was a publication, I can't remember exactly what it was, but it kind of doesn't matter, who was trying to get clicks to promote PewDiePie as having done something wrong, right? So PewDiePie has a platform that's like 100 times larger than that publication. So he does a 5-minute video takedown of here's exactly what happened. Here was my disclosure. Here's why these guys are calling me out. Here's why this is completely wrong. But I think we're going to see some changes in that environment where there's more standardization or more best practices put forth. And brands are going to be more concerned about how they engage with influencers to make sure that there's more disclosure that's happening to really let the consumer know. Because ultimately, there's a big difference if an influencer is talking about a product or brand because it's really coming from their own heart, right, their own engagement, versus the brand has paid them and they're not really talking about that. So I think you're going to see some breakdown in that piece. And hopefully that actually encourages more authenticity, and some of that disclosure might help with that.
Great.
I think a lot of people get the gatekeeper problem, right? Is that sort of what you were speaking to as well? Like if you're an influencer and you're trying to influence and get deals and make a living doing it, and yet it's easy to say it's all egalitarian, and yet you're finding that there's still gatekeepers and you're not able to access that. And I would say LinkedIn is incredible. I mean, you can meet anybody on LinkedIn if you act professionally and just reach out. You will get amazing response. People will totally get on the phone with you and listen to your pitch, and then it's about you. You've gotten past the gatekeeper, and now it's up to you to deliver.
Great, thank you. Go ahead.
Just really quickly, we've, just from the brand side, we've also had influencers contact us, whether it's through, our customer service or whatever, just saying, hey, I'm an influencer, I'd love to work with your brand. So that's also maybe having more of a proactive approach and actually reaching out to the brands. I know that can be time consuming, but it could be.
Donna, I'll second that. When I've been at brands or in a CMO role, I'm always happy it's when somebody reaches out to me and just connects based on like the values and the shared purpose. I always love those people.
Find out where that. Sorry, go ahead.
Just because then the brand knows this person actually loves their product.
Yeah.
So
Yeah, go ahead.
You want to make some coin? All right. Find out where the ad people are.
Right.
Go network with those people, because guess who recommends
It's not the
influencers?
PR, it's not
No.
the PR agency.
No, go to the creative shops.
I do many, a lot about
Yeah, go to like James Beach in Venice, they're all there. It's like hang out, like the Whaler or something, like, or all those people are, right? But that's true, actually, like for real, network with that crew.
Brian.
Yeah, to add on that, so Jennifer asked the question. There's another Jennifer in the audience who shared a story early in an earlier panel about a influencer who reached out when she was pretty small, maybe 100 or 200,000 subscribers, and had a really compelling story and content of what she created, and that created a relationship with a brand. I think it's a high-end resort brand. Turtle Bay might have been at the end of that, if I'm remembering correctly. But as an influencer, if you reach out early and a brand can see your passion for the space and maybe their product, and they believe in how you're growing, they can actually help you grow, and you can help the brand grow. And that's a really cool way to do it.
Thank you very much. We've come to the end of our allotted time. Thank you to all of our panelists. Please give them a round of applause.